Video game publishers and developers really don't make a lot of racing games anymore. This generation has been dominated by Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon. Even the stalwart Gran Turismo has taken a seat back. Codemasters, one of the publishers who thrives on racing games, has definitely found a niche for themselves, releasing games like Dirt 4, Dirt Rally 2.0, and Onrush, a game which I adored last year. Well, they have a new racing game out right now that is kind of a reboot or a reimagining of one of their best games from last generation, and that is Grid. And I thought we talk a little bit about it in this review right now. What is going on, guys? Randall Thor 19, the man with the million, back again with another video. First up, I want to thank the publisher for sending over a code for the purpose of this video. Now, I like my arcade-style racers. I love Forza Horizon. I really do like Need for Speed. I enjoyed the Dirt series, but my favorite Codemaster racer from last gen was Grid, so I got pretty excited when they announced they were bringing it back. I'm not sure what to call this, like a reboot or a reimagining, but Grid is back. It's available right now on Xbox One, the PS4, and the PC for $60, and I have a lot to say about it. So, the whole point of the game is you're trying to become the Grid World Series champion. And if you recall, Grid, when it came out back in 2008, was the first racing game to introduce that rewind feature, they call it here flashback, that Forza Horizon basically took and popularized. But it was done first here. It makes a return. You can press Y anytime you screw up and rewind it. And of course, in a game like this, you can set the game to be as hard or as easy as you want. You can set it up to be more of a sim racer if you so choose. But there's a bunch of events that you need to complete. And the type of racing, it's really close quarters. Now, whether you're racing on a winding track or you're kind of barreling through the streets of Florida or perhaps Japan, some of the walls can be pretty tight and usually stacked one on top of another because there's 16 different racers. And obviously it's your, you have to get to the front of the pack, lead for a couple laps, and win. Now, the way the game is set up is there are a couple different disciplines. There's actually like 5 disciplines: touring, stock, tuner, GT, Fernando Alonso, which is kind of the F1 cars, and an invitational series. And the career is laid out in a way where once you complete 10 races in a category, you unlock kind of a showdown at the end. And once you beat 4 showdowns, you unlock the Grid World Series. Now, you can't just start at touring and just work your way through it. The game does a good job of mixing it up because as you progress, you have to buy more cars. It's not just buy one car and use it for all these different events. So they give you some money to start out, you race, you win some more, and then you'll be expected to buy a more expensive car to continue on in that discipline, and you won't have it. So then, okay, I'm going to move from touring to stock. You'll do some more races. That discipline will ask you to get a different car, and then you'll try out some tuners. So it does a really good job of kind of guiding you through the different disciplines. But honestly, there's really not much variety here because all you have are your standard races. Sometimes you have a time attack, especially in the tuner category, and there's a handful of point-to-point. So if you're not really a big fan of circuit races, which this game is comprised mostly of, then I would stay away. It's like 95% of the content in the game. And it's not just one race. It's a series of rounds. So in the beginning, it's 2 rounds, then eventually 3 rounds, 4 rounds. There are a couple 1-round events, but they're very few and far between. So basically, you'll get into an event, you'll race it, you'll get points if you finish first, and essentially, they do an interesting thing here. So when you finish first, in the second round, you'll start at the back of the pack. And the AI is such a way in this game where if they win first and they start in the back of the pack at 16th, they won't win again. So it makes it very easy to win on mostly all the different difficulty settings except for the hardest. The AI is not really much of a challenge. For the most part, I thought the cars all drove really good, and they're all different from one another. You know, you get into a GT and you drive that around for a couple events, and then get into an F1, they drive completely different, and which is a big plus in my opinion. But sometimes it's a little wonky. There are cars out there that seem to drive from their rear end, so it can be a little weird. So I like that each one of the cars drive differently than one another, and I liked most of the stages. I liked how they've introduced, you know, you can have night races, day races. They introduce weather, so you can have rain at the different, you know, times of day. And sometimes this game can be a looker. You know, at nighttime on the Shanghai track, you have the high rises with all the neon lights, or maybe the sun is setting on a speedway, and it just looks good. But you'll notice the more you play that a lot of the stuff that's far away is low res or not detailed enough. And I didn't really pick up on that until I started getting about 6 or 7 hours in, as I felt the first 5 hours was pretty good. The problem I have with the game is that it gets incredibly boring really fast, because the career event list is just that. It's a list of events, and I was starting to dread doing the 4 rounds. And what really compounds the issue is there's not a lot of track variety. There's 13 tracks in the game. There's some different configurations, but when you do a race and there's 4 different rounds and you do it on 4 different tracks, and then you do the next one and you're on the same tracks but maybe going backwards or at a different time of day, eventually that gets old after a while. And then you add in the fact that there's not a lot of cars in the game, that you can't tune the cars at all, you can't upgrade them, that the leveling system, the XP that you get at the end of each race is, you know, meaningless. I hit level 60 when I finished the campaign at 20 hours. All you get are basically new decals for your car or pictures for your profile and things like that, so it makes it incredibly pointless. And they've tried to add a new feature, just kind of encapsulates the entire experience of Grid. Could have been something great, but I don't think it had enough time in the oven or a big enough budget. So one of the defining features of the game is this nemesis system that they've added, where if you smash into an opponent while you're racing, they become your nemesis, and they'll actively try to take you out, spin you around to make you lose the race. And that is incredibly cool in concept. However, in execution, it's done poorly, just kind of like Grid itself, because it only lasts for a single race. So as soon as you finish the next race, it's a clean slate. All your nemesis are reset. I think it would be a much better system if it lasted for, you know, a set of rounds, or maybe for a category, or maybe for the whole career. But that's kind of Grid in a nutshell. It's really pretty at the start, and then you kind of notice the flaws. Some of the driving is really good, but you know, certain cars don't drive right. There's not a lot of cars to choose from. You can upgrade it. There's not a lot of tracks, and the variations are very minuscule. So as you're doing the races, you'll be racing on the same tracks all the time, which leads to boredom with the way everything is set up. So I liked my initial 5 or 6 hours of the game, and by hour 20, I was done, and I don't want to revisit it. I am incredibly disappointed because I liked Grid 1. So with all that said, I'm going to give this game a 6.8. If you're a fan of Grid, if you are looking for a racing game because there is no Forza this year and it's just Need for Speed, I would wait for the holidays to come around and pick this up for $30, because I think at $60, it doesn't have enough to meet that price. But hey, that's just my opinion on Grid. Let me know what you think about it if you've played it in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit the like button, share this out on social media, hit that sub button if you're new, and if you always want to be notified immediately when I drop new content, make sure you hit that notification bell. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see everybody in the next video. Later, guys.